Hello and welcome to another video. Instead of One Piece today, we'll be looking at an upcoming release for Union Arena, which is the new Jujutsu Kaisen Starter Deck releasing on November 22nd. So a quick summary of how the video is going to go before we get into it. And of course, there's going to be timestamps down below if you want to jump to something specific. But first, we're going to go over the starter deck page real quick, the official starter deck page. Then we'll talk about some card restrictions that they have in Japan, which involves cards from this starter deck. After that, we'll take a look at all the cards that come in the starter deck, their counts. Then we'll look at the starter deck exclusive cards. So those are cards that you can't pull from the booster packs and can only get them out of the starter deck. Then I'll show you what you could make by mashing together two starter decks without any upgrades from packs in the set. After that, we'll see some basic upgraded deck lists that I've put together for the starter deck for blue, I guess you could say. And we'll be showing two types of decks based on each of the possible restrictions we might or might not get in English. Also, I don't claim to be, a great deck builder. I'm not terrible. I have won myself the CC winner card, so go me. But yeah, anyways, these are going to be basic deck lists showing the cards that you will want to use in upgrades, and the numbers or counts can be tweaked for what feels best in the end to you. We won't be going over the yellow or purple cards in this video that come out in the set. I think I'll do a separate video going over the set's release that focuses more on the yellow and purple side of things. But since the starter deck's blue, we're going to be focusing on that for this video. Now, if you guys end up enjoying this breakdown or found it helpful, please leave a like or a comment letting me know. Also comment anything you'd like to see going forward, along with things that you didn't like so much or what I might improve on if I do more videos in the future. And with that said, let's jump into it. So something I want to go over real quick is you can actually test out the Jujutsu Kaisen Starter Deck in tutorial now, the tutorial app. And I'll put a link to this in the description, but pretty much you get to use the starter deck versus other starter decks, which would be the Bleach and the Hunter x Hunter starter deck right now, in some tutorial games, and it'll run you through it. And you can get it on Google Play Store or Apple Store, or you could even do it in browser. So I'll leave a link to this page in the description that I'm on right now, and you guys could try that if you're interested. But now let's look at the starter deck page real quick. So as we can see, the starter deck is released on November 22nd, 2024. Brings the white hot battles with domain expansion. It's going to be a deck of 50 cards with 3 action points, like we've seen. Some special starter deck exclusive cards, the Sukuna's Finger and the Sukuna Raid card, which this is the card that has potential restrictions that we'll go over in a second. And then there's some starter deck only cards. We'll go over those, and you could get the action points in the holo version if you're lucky. So good luck to everybody there. What it will look like, but 2 of them. MSRP $11.99 USD. We'll see what they sell for. And yeah, you get a play sheet, the 50 cards, and the 3 action points. So that's what's going to be in the deck. Now let's do a little bit of a deeper dive into it. So hopping into it here, we're going to look at the restrictions first. This is a old restriction now that has been lifted, but it could be a potential one that we get first, just like they did. And this restriction is cannot have these 2 cards in the same deck. So you either have to run this one or this one. You can't have both in the same deck. That's the first restriction that we may or may not get. And then the current restriction for Japan or Asia, I guess, is the Sukunas. You can only run 2 of them now. So you can run the Yuji with them, but you can only have up to 2 of the Sukunas. So that's the other possible restriction. And then there's more here, but it involves Code Geass. So yeah, let's start looking at the actual cards in the deck now. So this is the deck as we get it. The card counts are at the top right here for the amount that we'll get in the deck. Starting off, we have this 0 cost. If it'll open here. And this is the 0 cost. You can switch it to resting and generate an extra energy until the end of turn. And at the end of main phase, sideline the character. Next one we get is 4 of this 0 cost Yuji. 4 of this 0 cost. When attacking, draw a card, then place 1 card from your hand into your sideline. And 4 of this 0 cost Megumi. Next up, we get 2 of this 1 cost. Bounce back 2 energy generation Nobara. So she bounces back 1 of the 0 costs and then starts generating 2. 1 of this Megumi. When played, he debuffs an opponent's character by 1000. Then we have the 2 energy cost. When active, generate 2 energy Gojo. We get 2 of those in the deck. 2 of this Masamichi. And this is the switch to resting, buff 1 of your characters 1000. It's like the wing from Hunter x Hunter. I'm not sure if Bleach has a card like this that I can remember. Then we get 2 of this Yuji, that's 3 cost. And I think this is a pretty good card. 3 cost, 2 energy generation. And on your opponent's turn, if there's a Sukuna's finger in your sideline, you gain 1000 BP. Solid card, I think. 3 cost, 2 energy generation Nobara. And it's also an active trigger, which is always nice to have. We love to have action triggers. This Yuji was also an action trigger. Active trigger, sorry. And Sukuna, we get 2 of those. During your turn, if there's 1 or more Sukuna's finger in your sideline, this character gains 1000 BP until the end of the turn. If there are 2 or more, this character gains impact. On play, draw 2 cards and place 1 from your hand into the sideline. So, very solid card here. The other one that we get 2 of is this Megumi. The problem with this one, I find, is it's a 2 action point. And then on play, choose 1 of the characters on your opponent's field with 3000 BP or less and return it to its owner's hand. It's a 4K body and it can bounce back, but only being able to bounce back at 3000 BP might not be too great right now, especially for 2 action points. I think I'd rather run the Gojo effect, Impact 1, so we love Impact. It's a pretty strong thing to have. And then when played, if on the front line, your opponent returns 1 of their frontline characters to its hand. Now, the thing about this Megumi, actually, that I want to go over is it's up to 1 character on your opponent's field. So potentially you can actually bounce back like their energy generators. If that's correct, if I'm interpreting that correctly, right? Because when you look at the Gojo, it's 1 character on your opponent's front line, and this one just says field. So it's actually pretty interesting there. Sukuna's Finger. This is a pretty big card for the deck. This card cannot be used unless you place 1 card from your life to your sideline, or switch to resting 1 of your active Yuji Itadoris on your field. Draw 1 card, choose up to 1 of your AP cards, and set it to active. So, pretty much a free draw if you rest the Yuji, and then you put this in the sideline to strengthen Sukuna and other characters potentially. Domain Expansion. This is the card that restands 2 of your AP cards. It's also your final triggers in the deck. You get 2 of those. First year at Tokyo Jujutsu High. Draw 3 cards, place 2 into your sideline. You get 2 of those. And 2 of the special trigger here, Divergent Fist. Choose 1 character with 5000 or less BP on your opponent's front line and return it to their hand. So more bouncing back to hand. Interesting, we're seeing this. And then if Yuji Itadori is on the field, you can sideline it instead of bouncing it. And finally, the card, we get 2 of this Sight card. Play the site set to active onto your field. Activate main, switch to resting. Once per turn, you can only activate this ability if you have used an event card this turn. All characters on your field gain 1000 BP until the end of the turn. Interesting. So yeah, that's what we get in the deck. Now let's take a look at which cards are exclusive to the starter deck, so you can only get them from the starter. And that would be these here. And this is also the count that you get in one starter deck. So the Megumi, sorry. Not really useful. I don't think there's a red Megumi. So it's just a 0 cost body, no trigger or anything. This 0 cost. So 1k body. If you push it up early, you can draw a card in sideline, I guess. This Yuji's good, I think. It's a red target and 2 energy generator, active trigger. You know, it's got a lot of solid stuff going on here. Potential 4k body on your opponent's turn as well. Nobara, I think it's another pretty good card. We get 4 of. And the Sukuna, obviously, it's a good card. Potentially restricted to only 2 of. So we'll have to see still. We don't know. Megumi, like I was saying before, being able to bounce back someone on your opponent's energy line is interesting. I feel like you could definitely mess up and stall some people out that have moved people up and then don't have characters to replay if you bounce like a potential 3 cost or something. Or you could bounce back a big body that's sitting on the energy line that's about to be pushed up as well, maybe. I don't know, it has to be 3k, right? So not really a big body, but yeah. There are some 3ks that turn into 4ks and whatnot. Gojo, I think I like him better than Megumi. Still, action 2. But I like the impact, and bouncing back a frontline character is pretty good as well, I think. And then first year of Tokyo, the draw 3, sideline 2. And the site card. Those are all the exclusive cards that you can only get in the starter deck. So if you want to play set of this Yuji, you'll either have to buy 2 more singles after, along with Sukuna, of course. If you wanted to play set, you have to buy 2 singles, or just buy 2 starter decks, and you get a full play set of everything here. So let's see what we could do if we are only merging 2 starter decks. We're not using any cards from the booster packs or anything. Something I threw together was this one here. It's not great. Maybe some of the ratios could be better too, but with what we get in the starter deck, I think this is pretty good. I decided to run 4 of the Gojo and 2 of the Megumis. Maybe go like 3-3. Again, we're just doing the best with what we can in the starter deck. I think if you go this route, hopefully you can pick up some of the good common, uncommon, rare singles that might upgrade the deck a bit. But yeah, this is kind of what we're looking at if we wanted to merge 2 starter decks and roll with that. All right, so next up we're gonna be actually getting into the upgraded deck list now. So let's head on over to that. So starting off with the deck list, we're gonna look at some potential upgraded decks that you could make based on this restriction where you can't have both of these cards in the same deck together. Starting off, we're gonna look at which one should we look at first? I got 2 different types of decks here for the blue color. Let's look at the Nanami version because I think it's interesting. So Nanami, like sort of hybrid decks here are a potential deck, but it gets better in set 2. It's not the greatest right now because of some of the cards we're missing that come in set 2, but I think it could be an interesting deck still. So first off, we're running 4 of the 0 cost Yujis, 4 of this Nobara, which is the draw one, and then sideline 1 from your hand. So cycle 3 of the Nanamis, 0 cost Nanami, 2 of the Nobara 1 cost bounces, bounce something back to your hand, 2 energy generation. Then we're running 1 of this Maki here. So it's mostly used for the when played, I think. You look at the top 2 cards of your deck, add 1 to your hand, and then place the remaining cards in your sideline. So you play it, you get the draw card, and sideline another card from your deck. Run 1 of her. Maybe you bump it up to 2 or something. The ratios and stuff can all be changed for something like this, of course. I just like to put together a basic, version of the deck that I think could be good. We're running 3 of this Nanami. It's a 3 cost, and when attacking, you may place 1 card from the top of your deck to your sideline. If you do, choose up to 1 character on your opponent's field, and it loses 1000 BP. So pretty good. It's a 3k BP as well, and has a draw trigger, which is something we want to do in this deck. We'll see later on. We want to draw cards. Then we have this Yuji, of course, 3k body. It's gonna be 4k once we get a Sukuna's finger in the sideline. So yeah, and it also has the activate trigger, which is a strong trigger to have. Then 2 of this color Yuji. Now the problem with set 1 right now, I think, is these 2 cards that are color aren't the greatest, and we get better ones in set 2. I'll actually show here. Don't mind the Black Clover. I was looking into some stuff personally because I'm looking to pre-order stuff. So this is the ones that we get, the current color ones that we have. And then this is a color that we'll get in set 2, which is a very strong card. It's 1 action point cost, first of all, 3 energy cost to play, and it's a 3500 body. Then the effect on it, if there is a Sukuna's finger on your outside area, this character generates 1 more energy. So this is most likely going to be a 2 energy generator most of the time as well. It's a Yuji. It only costs 3 to play and 1 action point, and you get the color trigger that is a lot better than the current ones we have. And the other color is actually this Nanami from set 3, so that's even farther away. The Yuji is the big one, I think, but this is one for down the line as well. This one is based on how many cards you have in your deck and stuff, like the other Nanami that we're going to look at later that we actually get to run. But yeah, we're really looking for this one once the next set comes out for our color trigger. I don't like the current ones too much. Oops. So yeah, that's why we're running 2 of the Yuji and 2 of this other color trigger. This Nanami will get there. But what this Yuji does is he's a 3 cost for 2 action points. When played, choose 1 character with 3500 or less BP on your opponent's front line. If you have 1 or 2 Sukuna's fingers in your sideline, return the chosen character to the owner's hand. So it'll bounce back for 3500 or less. And then if you have 3 or more Sukuna's finger in your sideline the character instead of bouncing back to hand. And then we get the color trigger. This color trigger is choose 1 character with 3500 or less BP on your opponent's front line and return it to their hand. So it can be a pretty big bounce back for the color trigger. But I just think the problem with running it right now is the 2 action points on these characters are not that great compared to what we get in the future. Then we have this 4 cost Raid Yuji. Great card here. When played, choose one character with 4,000 or less BP on your opponent's front line, and return it to their hand. So a bounce when played, or when raided, I guess. And then it's got the raid trigger, of course, and it's a 4K body. 4 energy to play and 1 action point. Next we have the Nanami raid. Effect for this one: if you have 15 or less cards in your deck, and this is a one rated effect, it's not a just basic. If you have 15 or less cards in your deck, this character gains 1000 BP, damage 2, impact 1, when sidelined. And then this one sideline part's separate. When sidelined, you may place 2 cards from the top of your deck into your sideline. If you do, choose one character on your opponent's front line and switch it to resting. So if you do potentially block with a card like this, which I guess it might happen, or if they just sideline you from some other effect, maybe you can change an opponent's frontline character to resting. Could save you from getting hit from another attack, so maybe you will need a block with this and then rest something at one point. So this is a very strong card, but the raid effect is only when you have 15 or less cards in your deck. The like the damage 2 and the impact. So we need to get to that point into the game. Next is the Sukuna. We're running 4 of because we're based on the first restriction, of course. And we went over the effect for this, but during your turn, if there's one or more Sukuna's finger in your sideline, this character gains 1000 BP until the end of turn. If there are 2 or more, this character gains impact. And then on play, draw 2 cards and place 1 from your hand to your sideline. Strong card. This is the other color that we were talking about. 2 action points and 4 energy to play it. If you have 15 or less cards in your deck, this character gains impact 1. When played, you may place 7 cards from your trash to your removal area. If you do, draw 3 cards. So this helps you get down to that 15 or less sort of point that you want to be for the raid Nanami. And if you already have the 15 or less, then you have impact on this character as well. But he's gonna help you get to that 15 point if you don't already. So since we're running a Nanami hybrid version of this, maybe we run more of those than the Yuji, but I was thinking just split it 2 and 2 for now. If we want 4 color triggers, that's what we're looking at. Then we have the 4 Sukuna's fingers. Of course, this is the main card for the Sukunas and some of the Yuji characters. So we want those. We have the domain expansions to switch your AP cards back to active. And your final trigger. And we're going with a different special. This is a Nanami special compared to the Yuji special we saw in the starter deck. So basic effect without any conditions. Choose one of your opponent's frontline characters with 5000 BP or less. Your opponent places it at the top or bottom of its deck. And then if you have Nanami on your field, you can choose if you want it on the top or bottom. I'm guessing it's usually going to be the bottom of their deck. But yeah, very strong effect in my opinion. And then the special trigger, choose one character on your opponent's front line and sideline it. And then we're running the Malevolent Shrine, one of these stages. So play this site set to active on your field. Activate main, switch to resting. Choose one Sukuna on your field. It gains all of the following effects during this turn, dependent on the number of Sukuna's fingers into your sideline. 2 or more, you gain damage 2. 3 or more, you gain snipe. And 4 or more, you gain impact +1. So if you have 4 fingers in your sideline, and you have, let's say, this Sukuna on the field, then you will have snipe, double damage, and impact 2. So you could kill something and still impact 2, which is crazy. to be able to do that. So that's kind of the point there. If you want to use the Sukuna or the Nanami, you have two big hitters here, and then of course this Yuji is a good card as well for your 3 raids that we're running. So that's a Nanami Sukuna sort of hybrid deck that you could run based on this restriction where you can't run both of these in the same deck. Next version is not a Nanami hybrid, but more Sukuna focused. So starting up, we run 4 Yuji 0 cost, 4 Nobara 0 cost, the draw 1 sideline 1 cycle, and 4 of this Takuma Ino 0 cost. Now this is because this is a 2k body and it's a draw trigger compared to the Nanami that we were running before for this, which was a get trigger and a 1500 body. This one is just make sure to have as a 0 cost. If we, trigger it off life, we get the draw at least, and it's okay as a 2k body early. Then we're running 2 of the Makis, which is the look at top 2 of your deck, add 1 to hand, and place 1 in your sideline cycle when played. Not even cycle, actually, just draw a card and sideline a card out of the top 2 cards on your deck. It's pretty nice to have. And then we have this when active 2 energy generation Gojo, 2 of those. 2 of the color trigger Yujis. Again, this point I'm only running 2 color triggers in this deck, and I know it's 2 energy generation for 3 costs, but it also costs 2 AP, and you do get to bounce back a frontline for your opponent, but the 2 AP and 3500 condition is, I'm not sure how good it's going to be currently with what we have seen. So I'm choosing to only run 2. Maybe you bump it up to 4 and change the other numbers for other stuff here. Like maybe you go down 2 Nobaras instead and go up 2 just for the color trigger point of it. But this one also has a good trigger as well, so we'll look at that. Then we have 3 of this Yuji. Opponent's turn, it's a 4k if you have a Sukuna's finger in the sideline, which is good, and it's an active trigger, which is a trigger we'd love to have in the deck. Also 2 energy generation, always good, and it can be rated by these cards. Nobara, 3k body, 2 energy generation for 3 energy and 1 AP. And then another point to have this card in the deck is because of the active trigger. Active triggers are really good to have if you can fit them in. So we're running 4 of those. Then we're running 4 of this Yuji. Choose 1 character with 4000 and return it to their hand. Very strong raid card. 4 of this Sukuna, based on the restriction that we're basing this deck off of. We're running 4. If there's 1 or more Sukuna finger in your sideline, this character gains 1000 until end of turn. If there are 2 or more, he gains impact as well. And then on play, you draw 2 and place 1 from your hand to your sideline. Very strong. Then we're running 2 of this Sukuna as well. So it's a 5 energy, 1 action point to play. And when played, choose 1 character on your opponent's front line and switch it to resting. It will remain set to resting the next time it would be switched to active. And then you also get to look at the top 5 cards of your deck, reveal up to 1 Sukuna's finger or Malevolent Shrine card among them, and add it to your hand. Place the remaining cards on the bottom of your deck in any order. So this helps you search for the Malevolent Shrine if you're looking for that, or maybe Sukuna's fingers. Hopefully you don't get like a Malevolent Shrine and then 4 Sukuna's fingers. That would be crazy unlucky that you'd have to bottom deck. There are other 4 cards there. Next up is this Sukuna. It's a 6 energy cost, 2 action point. It's not a raid card. And the effect on it, it has impact when played on the front line, you can return one of their frontline characters to their hand, the opponent's frontline characters to their hand. Then if you have 2 or 3 Sukuna's fingers in your sideline, your opponent has to return 2 characters instead. And if you have 3, your opponent has to return 3 characters instead. So I have this as a 1-of in here. I'm not sure if it's actually a strong card or not, but I could see like some crazy comeback games with this potentially. Like if your opponent has a huge front line and you have some bodies on the board but they're low life, you could just play this and pretty much get rid of 3 of their blocking opportunities, if you have the required Sukuna's fingers, of course, in your sideline. So potential to you know, have a crazy comeback if that ever came up. Then you run the 4 Sukuna's fingers. This card cannot be used unless you place 1 card from your life to your sideline, or switch to resting one of your active Yuji Itadori's on your field. Draw 1 card, choose up to 1 of your APs, and set it to active. Very strong. I keep reading this card and a lot of these other cards over and over just in case someone is skipping to a certain, you know, deck in the video. Domain expansion, this one sets your 2 AP cards to active again, and it's also your final trigger. Divergent Fist this time, since it's not a Nanami hybrid, we're just running the Yujis. So choose 1 character with 5,000 or less on your opponent's front line and return it to the hand. If Yuji's on the field, then sideline it instead. And that's your special trigger. And we're running one of the Malevolent Shrines. Since we have 3 Sukunas, this could be pretty crazy. And maybe you want to run 2 of these also. I don't know. Once again, I'm not an amazing deck builder. I just throw together basic list that could be tweaked and stuff depending on how things go. But this deck, something about this deck that I like is how many triggers it has. Like it has 8 active triggers, and you have a get trigger here, a draw trigger here, another draw trigger. No trigger on these 2, but everything else has a trigger. All the raid triggers, of course, and then all the other triggers. This one is also a get, so if this is in your life, you get to add it to your hand at least if they hit you and you find it there. And we already know what finals and specials do. And the Sukuna's finger is a draw card, so it puts it in the sideline and you get to draw a card anyways, which is very nice. That's one thing I like about this version of the blue deck, is just all the triggers in it. Next up, we're going to be looking at the restrictions based on only having 2 Sukunas in the deck. So what decks could we make out of that? Well, let's look at the Nanami version of if you can only have 2 Sukunas in a deck. Of course, we're running that other card since we're allowed to run both of them in this version of the restrictions. But starting off, 4 Yujis, the basic Yuji, 4 of the Nobaras. You draw a card, place 1 on your sideline, cycle, or 3 of the Nobara this time. 4 of the Nanamis. Then we have 2 of the bounce Nobaras. Not sure how I feel about bounce 2 energy generators, but we're running 2 over. Then we have 2 of this Yuji, which we haven't seen yet, but looking at it now. When played, look at the top 5 cards of your deck, reveal up to 1 Sukuna's finger card among them, and add it to your hand. Place the remaining cards on the bottom of your deck in any order. If you added a card to your hand, place 1 card from your hand onto the bottom of your deck. Okay, so that's a 2 energy cost, 1 AP, 1 energy generator, and 3k body, along with that on play effect. Then we're running 2 of these Makis. This is the draw 2, add 1 to hand, and place the other one into the sideline. So good card draw there, and sidelining potential for Sukuna's fingers if needed. The 2 cost, 2 energy generation when active Gojo. We're running 2 of those. And 4 of this Yuji, which is the 2 energy generator. And on your opponent's turn, it's a 4K body if you have a Sukuna's finger in your sideline, also active trigger. 4 of the Nanamis. If you have 15 cards or less in your deck, this character gains 1000 BP, damage 2, and impact 1. Then when sidelined, you may place 2 cards from the top of your deck into your sideline. If you do, choose 1 character on your opponent's front line and switch it to resting. So potential to save you a bit there if you block with it. Then we have 2 of the Sukunas since we're restricted to only having 2 in this version. During your turn, if there's 1 or more Sukuna's finger in your sideline, this character gains 1000 BP until the end of turn. If there are 2 or more Sukuna's fingers in your sideline, then this character gains impact. And on play, draw 2 cards and place 1 card from your hand to the sideline. Then we have the Yuji. When played, choose 1 4K character on your opponent's front line and return it to their hand. Very strong. And for our color trigger, we're running 3 of the Nanami color trigger this time. I've spoken about how I feel about the 2 color trigger options that we get in set 1 and why they're better in set 2 earlier on. But yeah, if you have 15 or less cards in your deck, this character gains impact 1. When played, you may place 7 cards from your trash to your removal area. If you do, draw 3 cards. So that sets up for the Nanami raid to have 15 cards or less in your deck, of course. And the 4 Sukuna's fingers. This card cannot be used unless you place 1 card from your life to your sideline and switch to resting 1 of your active Yujis on your field. Draw 1 card, choose 1 of your APs and set it active again. Good. Domain expansion. Restand 2 of your AP cards. And the Nanami special trigger instead of the Yuji one, because I like the potential for this one to bottom deck a card instead of sideline it. That's why I run this in the Nanami hybrid decks over the Yuji special trigger instead. And then we always want the 1 Malevolent Shrine to potentially buff up our Sukuna, which we're only having 2 of in this deck. So yeah, maybe numbers and other things need changed here, but this is a basic rendition of a Nanami Sukuna Yuji hybrid sort of deal from set 1, based on this restriction of only being allowed to have 2 Sukunas. Next up, we'll look at the more Sukuna focused version of a blue deck with this restriction. We have the 4 Yujis. We have the 4 0 cost Takumas with the draw trigger and 2K body. We're running 3 of the draw 1, sideline 1, cycle 0 cost Nobaras, and then 2 of the bounce Nobaras, 2 energy generation, 1 cost there, of course. And we're running 4 of this Yuji here. Look at the top 5 cards of your deck, reveal up to 1 Sukuna's finger, and add it to your hand. Place the remaining cards on the bottom of your deck. If you add a card to your hand, then place 1 from your hand to the bottom of your deck as well. And 2 of the 2 energy generation when active Gojos. How much? 2 of the Makis. So draw 2, add 1 to hand and 1 to sideline. 4 of the double energy generation Yujis for 3 cost. And on your opponent's turn, it's potentially a 4K body if you have a Sukuna's finger in your trash or in your sideline. And it has an active trigger as well, which we love to see. We're running 2 of the Yuji color triggers this time. So when played, choose 1 character with 3500 or less BP on your opponent's front line. If you have 1 or 2 Sukuna's fingers in your sideline, return the chosen character to the owner's hand. And if you have 3 or more, then sideline that character instead. Then we have 4 of the Yuji raids. This bounces back on opponent's 4K or less BP character to their hand. 2 of the Sukunas that are restricted to only having 2 in this version. During your turn, if there's one or more Sukuna's fingers in your sideline, this character gains 1000 BP until the end of turn. If there are 2 or more, this character gains impact. And on play, draw 2 cards, place 1 from your hand to the sideline. Then we're running 3 of this other Sukuna, the 5 cost, 1 action point 1. When played, choose 1 character on your opponent's front line and switch it to resting. It will remain set to resting. The next time it would be switched to active. And then you also get to look at the top 5 cards of your deck, reveal up to 1 Sukuna's finger or Malevolent Shrine card among them and add it to your hand. Place the remaining cards on the bottom of your deck in any order. So we're running 3 of those. And then once again, we're running 1 of the 6 energy cost, 2 action point cost Sukuna, which has impact. And when played, if on the front line, your opponent returns 1 of their frontline characters to its owner's hand. If you have 2 or 3 Sukuna's fingers in your sideline, your opponent returns 2 characters instead. And if you have 3 or more Sukuna's, I think this is a mistranslation here, actually, now that I'm reading this. If you have 3 or more Sukuna's fingers in your sideline, your opponent returns 3 characters. So, based on... Oh. Maybe this is supposed to be if you have more than 3 Sukuna's fingers in your sideline. Because I see 2 to 3 here, and I see 3 here as well. But yeah, that's... I guess we'll have to see for the official translation there. But yeah, very strong card. Potential to end the game by sending 2 to 3 characters back to their hand and then getting your swings through. We're running for the Sukuna's fingers, of course. This card cannot be used unless you place 1 card from your life to your sideline or switch to resting 1 of your active Yujis on your field. Then you get to draw 1, choose up to 1 of your AP cards and set it back to active. Okay. Or domain expansions, final trigger, restand 2 of your AP cards. Divergent Fist for the special this time instead of the Nanami one. This one, choose 1 character with 5,000 or less BP on your opponent's frontline and return it to their hand. If Yuji's on the field, sideline it instead. And then we're running 1 of the Malevolent Shrines to buff up any of these Sukunas here that we can. So yeah, this is another version of the blue deck that you could potentially build in set 1. Missing some good cards from set 2, but this could still do some work, I think. Maybe play with the numbers a little bit once again. I'm no expert in deck building. Yeah, here we go. And then, so next up, we're going to look at what it would be like if there is no restrictions. Starting with the Nanami. So we run 4 of the Yuji 0 cost. Okay. 3 of the Nobara cycle cards. So draw 1, place 1 to your sideline. 4 of the Nanami 0 cost. 2 of the Nobara bounces. Not sure how I feel about it. Maybe it's good. Maybe you run the Gojo instead or something like that. Then we have 3 of this Yuji. So look at the top 5 cards of your deck. Reveal up to 1 Sukuna's finger card among them and add it to your hand. Place the remaining cards on the bottom of your deck in any order. If you added a card to your hand, place 1 card from your hand to the bottom of your deck. So very strong for searching for the Sukuna's fingers that you need. And we have this 3 cost 1 action point Nanami. When attacking, you may place 1 card from the top of your deck to your sideline. If you do, choose up to 1 character with 1500 or more BP on your opponent's field. It loses 1000 BP until the end of the turn. So this helps you get to that 15 deck amount of cards in your deck that you want for this Nanami and potentially this one too, I guess. Yeah, then we have 4 of this Yuji. So during your opponent's turn, you get 1000 BP if you have a Sukuna's finger in your sideline. It's an active trigger, generates 2 energy. and it's a good card to have. This Yuji here, the red card, you bounce back an opponent's 4k or less BP character to their hand. And then we have the Nanami. If you have 15 cards or less in your deck, this character gains 1000 BP, damage 2, impact 1. Crazy. When sidelined, you may place 2 cards from the top of your deck into your sideline. If you do, choose 1 character on your opponent's front line and switch it to resting. So if you end up having to block with this, then you could potentially save yourself from a second attack by blocking with this and arresting another character on their field. Then we have 4 of the Sukunas. During your turn, if there is 1 or more Sukuna's finger in your sideline, this character gains 1000 BP until the end of the turn. If there are 2 or more, this character also gains impact. On play, you can draw 2 cards and place 1 from your hand to the sideline. 2 of this Nanami color trigger. The only 2 color triggers we're running, because I don't really like the ones from set 1. Set 2 gets a lot better. If you have 15 or less cards in your deck, this character gains impact 1. When played, you may place 7 cards from your trash or your sideline to your removal area. If you do, then draw 3 cards. Help you get to that 15 card or less in your deck that you want to be at. And then, the color trigger. Choose 1 character with 3500 or less BP on your opponent's front line and return it to their hand. So Sukuna's Finger. This card cannot be used unless you place 1 card from your life to your sideline or switch to resting one of your active Yujis on your field. Draw 1 card, choose up to 1 of your AP cards, and set it to active again. Then we have 4 of the final triggers, the domain expansion to restand 2 of your AP cards. Ratio for the special trigger, we're going with the Nanami one again in this hybrid version of the blue deck. So choose 1 of your opponent's frontline characters with 5000 BP or less. Your opponent places it at the top or bottom of their deck. And then if you have Nanami on your field, you get to choose if they place it on the top or bottom. Usually going to be bottom, I would assume. I think that's a really strong special card. And 1 of the Malevolent Shrines. Play the site to activate onto your field. Play the site set to active on your field, Activate main, switch to resting. Choose 1 Sukuna on your field. It gains all of the following effects during this turn, dependent on the number of Sukuna's fingers in your sideline. 2 or more, you get damage 2. 3 or more, you gain snipe. And 4 or more, you gain impact 1. So this could be crazy to use with this Sukuna, of course, because it already gains impact. Basically, if you have 2 Sukuna's fingers in there, so then you get impact or damage 2. And then if you have 3, then you have sniper plus impact or damage 2. And if you have all 4, then you have sniper and impact 2. So you're doing 2 damage and sniping a character. Crazy combos there. So yeah, that's the Nanami version of the completely unrestricted Jujutsu Kaisen blue deck. Then we have the Yuji Sukuna version. So starting out, we have 4 of the 0 cost Yujis, 4 of the Nobaras, the draw 1, sideline 1 cycle card, 4 of the 0 cost Takumas. This is a draw trigger, and it's a 2000 power 0 cost. Then we have 2 of the bounce Nobaras. Not sure how I feel about it still. 3 of this Yuji Itadori, since we can run it with Sukuna in unrestricted. When played, look at the top 5 cards of your deck, reveal up to 1 Sukuna's finger card among them, and add it to your hand. So you search for your Sukuna's finger, then you place the remaining cards on the bottom of your deck in any order. If you added a card to your hand, place 1 from your hand on the bottom of your deck. 2 of the Makis for cycling. Not even cycling really, you get to draw 2, add 1 to hand, and place the other one in your sideline. So it really helps get through the deck. Honestly, this card's really good. Potentially bump it up to 3 maybe. In some of these decks, my numbers have been like 1 to 2 of. Maybe bump it up to 3. Yuji Itadori for 3 energy cost and 1 action point cost. It generates 2 energy. And then on your opponent's turn, if you have a Sukuna's Finger in your sideline, this character gains 1000 BP. It's also an active trigger. We love to see it. The color Yuji, we're running 3 of this time for the color trigger. Don't really like the color triggers from set 1. Set 2 gets better. And I keep saying this just in case someone skips to certain decks and whatnot. Skips over other ones. Explain my reasoning behind it. So when played, choose one character with 3500 or less BP on your opponent's front line. If you have 1 or 2 Sukuna's Finger in your sideline, return the chosen character to the owner's hand. If you have 3 or more Sukuna's Finger in your sideline, then sideline that character instead. And it's a color trigger, of course. 3500 or less BP on your opponent's front line and return it to their hand. Next up, the 4 cost Yuji Raid card. When played, one character with 4000 or less BP on your opponent's front line is returned to their hand. Then Sukuna, we're running 4 of because we're allowed to right now. If this restriction, or if there is no restrictions, sorry. During your turn, if there's 1 or more Sukuna's Finger in your sideline, this character gains 1000 BP until the end of turn. If there are 2 or more, this character gains Impact 1. Then on play, draw 2 cards and place 1 card from your hand to your sideline. We're running 2 of the 5 cost Sukunas. When played, choose 1 character on your opponent's front line, switch to resting. It will remain set to resting. The next time it would be switched to active. And then you get to look at the top 5 cards of your deck, reveal up to 1 Sukuna's Finger or Malevolent Shrine, and add it to your hand. Place the remaining cards on the bottom of your deck in any order. Then we have this 6 cost 2 action point Sukuna. I'm not sure if this is actually worth running, but I just like the idea of, you know, you have a bunch of Sukuna's Fingers in your trash or your sideline, and you get to bounce back 3 of their enemies and their character cards, sorry, and then, you know, swing through to finish out a game. I just like the vision behind that. Maybe it's not really going to be played, so you drop it and bump something else up. But yeah, that's my reasoning for that. I should read it just in case. Impact 1 when played. If on the front line, your opponent returns 1 of their frontline characters to its owner's hand. If you have 2 or 3 Sukuna's Fingers in your sideline, your opponent returns 2 characters instead. If you have 3 or more Sukuna's Fingers in your sideline, your opponent returns 3 characters instead. I think this is supposed to be more than 3. But that's just how it's translated here. I don't know, we'll have to see with the official one. And then Sukuna's Finger. Of course, we're running 4 of these. This card cannot be used unless you place 1 card from your life to your sideline and switch to resting 1 of your active Yuji Itadoris on your field. Draw 1 card, choose up to 1 of your AP cards and set it to active. Okay. And for the domain expansions, this is your final trigger. Choose up to 2 of your APs and switch it to active. For Divergent Fist, choose 1 character with 5000 or less BP on your opponent's frontline and return it to their hand. Or if Yuji's on the field, you can sideline it instead. And 1 of the Malevolent Shrines here. Of course, we want to buff up one of these Sukunas and start swinging. Late into the game, start doing some real damage, sniping things. And yeah, that's my version of the Sukuna focused build with no restrictions, depending on what we get, since we don't know yet. Yeah, and that's, I think, the end for this video. We'll go into an outro here, I guess, or something else. Guess we'll see. Now it is a little outro here, time to close it up. Thank you guys for watching, and again, if you enjoyed the video or found it helpful, please leave a like or even a comment down below what you might or might not have liked about the video and what I could maybe improve on in the future. Also, feel free to comment anything that you might want to see a video of and I could potentially do one for it. currently I'm thinking of a video going over the other colors in the Jujutsu Kaisen set. So yellow and purple decks is what that would be. Then back to One Piece, I want to make a video covering decks that people can make for probably a $100 or less budget. Also maybe some PRB01 box openings, and then a little bit further into the future for One Piece, the OP09 set breakdown, which will be coming out in December. So yeah, thanks again for watching, guys, and have a good one.